Pleased to present Austin Faith Dialogue, brought to you by the Austin Metropolitan Ministries. In the weeks ahead, you will see these and other programs by various denominations.
Last week, we asked the question, if the homeless can truly be helped in the city of Austin. Today, on Austin Faith Dialogue, we continue our search for answers. Austin Faith Dialogue, a public affairs series at the crossroads of religion and life. Austin Faith Dialogue highlights the interaction of the religious community with the social and cultural issues in the area in and around the capital city. Austin Faith Dialogue is brought to you by Austin Metropolitan Ministries in cooperation with KTBC TV. Join us now for this week's edition of Austin Faith Dialogue. Hello, I'm Richard Thompson, pastor of Central Presbyterian Church, and your host for this edition of Austin Faith Dialogue. Last week, we started a search for some answers to the question of homelessness in our capital city. We asked how there can be anywhere from 3,000 to 6,000 people lying on our streets, and how can that number be only an estimate? It seems no one really knows the true extent of the problem. We asked these questions and others of our guests from the Foundation for the Homeless. Today, we continue that discussion with staff members from HOBO, Helping Our Brothers Out. The group describes itself as a resource center for the homeless. But before we begin our discussion, let's go back and take a look at some of the topics we discussed last week.
It's hard to come up with an actual number, a number that's dependable, because so many of homeless people are what we call hidden homeless. It's a group of people that's not easily visible, they're not easy to find. You can't identify them as easily as the person who is literally living on the streets and is obviously very dirty and you know, other things which give them away.
It's an approximation then.
Right. There are a lot of people living in their cars. We get phone calls pretty regularly from people who have someone living in a car parked at a park in their neighborhood, and they wonder what to do.
Well, one of the things I think that we were mentioning, June, that you helped start this back in 1986, is, have you seen the problem get worse, get better, about the same? What's your perception of that?
It seems to me, like you said in the introduction, with the cutback in some of the social services, the problem is probably getting worse. We're seeing more families out and more women with children, women who are not married but have children to help support. So I would think the problem is getting worse.
Now joining us to continue our discussion on the homeless crisis in Austin is Bob Schwab, who as director of HOBO runs an organization that provides a variety of services to hundreds daily. Also joining us in the program is Rick Lane. He's HOBO's developmental director. And we thank you both for joining us.
It's a pleasure to be here.
And I'd like to pick up on this question of numbers just for a bit, because I think we've discovered that it's hard to get a fix on just how many of this population we're talking about in the city. But there's no question about how many folks that you serve, and Bob, could you just share with us something of that?
Sure. We know that between 100 and 300 people a day come into our facility for services, and that currently we have about 2,400 people that are registered to receive their mail there, that are on the streets or homeless literally, and need, as a kind of first stepping stone to getting their way out, a new postal address, and have come in and signed up to receive mail in our facility.
So you can keep numbers on that, but you don't know how many Salvation Army is serving, or Caritas, or the city, or the county. I mean, the other social service providers would have others that they're dealing with as well.
That's right. There are people that choose not to use our services for whatever reason that may be. Location may be one of those, or they're plugged in somewhere else and don't need what we have to offer. and choose not to come there. We do know it's a difficult number to get a fix on. It's not the kind of population that we could just freeze time with and go out and count each one. It's new people become homeless every day in this city, and some people are able to escape that condition. So it's very much a dynamic population,
Right.
and very hard to count.
Well, let's go from statistics, Rick, to people, to instances of folks that you know have been helped through HOBO, and what brought you to HOBO to be of help, just in any way?
Actually, it's to tell, I guess, a personal story is that I myself found myself in a difficult situation, and I was attending a meeting, and a person approached me and said that he was homeless and that he was a prescription drug addict and had lost his job, and I wasn't exactly sure what I could do for him. I knew I could maybe buy him a lunch, but I certainly couldn't take him into my home. So knowing Bob Schwab and knowing a little bit about the work that he did at HOBO, I was able to give him a call. Bob was successful in getting that person in and getting him into a detox center, and then eventually into a treatment center, and then transitional housing. And I recently saw him, and he was working and doing well. And so I wound up referring. I was panhandled on Riverside Drive. As I was walking into a convenience store, a person asked me for money. He actually came down out of the hills there, and I told him that I wouldn't give him any money, but that I would give him Bob Schwab's card. And I said, if you show up here at 8 o'clock tomorrow morning, maybe see if Bob can help you. This person said he'd been on the streets for 10 years and was a very successful businessman in Dallas at one time. Bob, there again, or with the help of his staff, was able to get him into a detox program and get him back on his feet. And he's doing very well. I still stay in contact with both of those men. I called Bob and said, Bob, how can I help you? And this relationship started from there. That was about 1.5 years ago, I'd say.
That's a new version of Silver and Gold have I none, but Bob Schwab's car I have that I can
Yes,
pass
sir.
on to you. And,
That's right.
And a referral to where there's help. And what is the help that HOBO offers that is, I'm sure it overlaps to a certain extent with other social service providers in town, but what makes it distinctive? What would we be missing if HOBO wasn't there?
Well, what we try to do is provide a very somewhat informal, comfortable, relaxed setting for homeless people to come where they feel like they're on their own ground and can take care of the great variety or range of needs that they have as a homeless person and begin to productively work towards self-sufficiency. So a key component of that is trying to be comprehensive. We know that if any key element of all the services that are needed is missing, they're likely going to be confounded or held back in their attempts to get off the streets, be it child care or transportation or what have you. So we try to be comprehensive, and we try to do that all under one roof. And so people can come in and access our services or the services of outside agencies in our facility.
Can you just list off those services?
Sure. We have, as you mentioned, a mail service. Over 2,400 people receive their mail there. Naturally, we have telephones. People can make phone calls and receive phone calls. So right there, they're able to contact and be contacted by employers. We have showers and a laundry, and we distribute free clothing. So people can come in, clean up. We also have a barber shop, so can really clean up, even get their hair styled, wash their clothes or get new clothes, and begin to go out and look for a job, clean and fresh and feeling good about themselves, and have an address to put on that application and a phone number and a way they can be contacted if indeed they're going to be considered for that job. So it puts them on equal footing with other job seekers. They're not discriminated against simply because they have no home. They can go out and compete for those jobs based on their own merit, their own qualifications, their own character, and not by some preconceived notion of what a homeless person is.
Okay.
We also have a clinic operated by the City Health Department. They send RNs into the facility, and we do flu shots and immunizations and HIV and TB testing, pregnancy tests, first aid, some medications dispensing and what have you, basic frontline health care. Legal Aid maintains an office there and does legal services and does a wonderful job of helping particularly the elderly and disabled qualify for Social Security benefits. MHMR maintains an office there through the mobile outreach team and does mental health counseling. The Foundation for the Homeless, which was on your previous show, supplies us with 3 VISTA volunteers, and they all do wonderful jobs. 2 of them in particular are working with the children that come into our facility, some of those at our apartments, and some that are there with their parents for appointments and for counseling or group meetings, support group meetings, that someone could kind of look after the kids while they're there.
And the apartments brings to mind the thing that I have perceived as being distinctive about your work, and that's the transitional housing.
Right. I think that's probably the real core of our services, what really makes the difference. Nationally, studies have shown that providing service-enriched transitional housing seems to be the greatest and most necessary service to helping homeless people really break out of that condition and become self-sufficient.
How many of those units do you have?
We have 57 units currently. We have an apartment complex, and in a partnership with the Greater Austin Housing Development Corporation, another nonprofit that we basically run and staff, they have duplexes and single-family homes throughout the city. So we have currently a total of 57 units of housing, mostly occupied with families, but all kinds of families, non-traditional families, single parents, a lot of single parents, mostly female households, and a lot of single individuals as well.
And I've also heard of work that you do in terms of drug treatment, rehabilitation. What's unique about that?
We have actually the state's only intervention program for the chemically dependent homeless person. We have 2 certified alcohol and drug abuse counselors in our facility that work directly with chemically dependent or addicted homeless persons to help them to come to grips with their problem, understand the dynamics of addiction, what it's doing to them, what's necessary to break out of that, and to work with them and to advocate for them and to get them into those precious few treatment beds that exist in the city.
All right.
But we know that homeless people have a difficult time accessing those because they lack an address or a stable place to live. So when they get to the top of that mailing list or that waiting list, they can be contacted. And with our resource center, they come in every day and go to support groups until that bed opens up for them. We literally rush them over there to make sure they get it. When they come out, importantly, we're able to break the cycle by placing them in transitional housing. They go right back to the street.
We're going to be taking a break in just a minute, but first, Rick, give us the address where HOBO is. People would like to visit your place.
Our resource center is located, and it's billed as Austin's Resource Center for the Homeless. I mean, it's located at 411 West 2nd, right on the corner of 2nd and San Antonio Streets next to Liberty Lunch.
Just near the City Hall.
Yes, right down from City Hall.
And that's a move from where you had originally been?
On 5th Street, yes, sir, 5th and Lavaca.
What does this new location do for you?
Well, we built a 11,700 square foot facility, and our goal, or I guess Bob's vision, was to build a facility large enough that other organizations could move in with us, sort of as a one-stop shop for homelessness. Instead of people having to go one location to get services and then move over here, they can come to us and receive a number of and variety of services under one roof.
Well, that is an advantage both from your standpoint and those that you're serving.
Yes, sir.
Well, I think that when we come back, we'll have a chance to get a little bit of the human interest story of how HOBO started. I'd like to touch on that. Okay. And also get some of your own feelings and experience as you are served by this as well as serving. I think we all are in that position where if we're in helping professions, we find ourselves helped as much as helping, and it's a receive as well as a give. I think that we'll continue our discussion on the homeless and how to make a difference right after this message.
Serving Austin means serving you. Each day, Austin Metropolitan Ministries is religion in action, providing affordable housing, caring for the elderly, marching against hunger, and much more. AMM promotes understanding, cooperation, and social involvement. So when we ask for your help, we're really asking to help you, Austin. To find out how you can help Austin Metropolitan Ministries help Austin through its member organizations, just call 472-7627.
Because a lot of times, because the crisis of homelessness is so overwhelming, people aren't sure what to ask for, or they don't ask for something that they're probably going to get, and that can be very confusing. And the amount of time it takes to sort through that can be very detrimental to running an agency which is seeing perhaps hundreds of people a week.
As we look back at that discussion last week in terms of how Foundation for the Homeless began, let's just focus now on how HOBO began. There's really a human interest story to that. I can remember when it was first announced about 1987.
Right.
And a particular individual, a couple of folks just got it started grassroots style. Just update us on that, if you would.
Marion Morris, who is still well known in Austin because he really was the genesis for HOBO, and I think greatly increased the awareness in the city of that problem and the human condition that it represents. Himself was homeless at one time and came to Austin looking for a better future as a homeless man with his family. The way I understand it was stopped at a Jim's coffee shop, had nowhere to go, was there for a long time, and someone in the restaurant approached him and asked if he could help. Is this other person okay? And Marion revealed that he indeed was homeless, had nowhere to go, and he was there with his family and just didn't know what to do. And the man said, well, I have an old rental house that's in bad condition. No one's in it now. If you're willing to fix it up, do that work, you can live there until you can find yourself jobs, save up enough money, and move out on your own. And Marion did that. Fortunately, had some building skills, some carpentry skills, and worked diligently at creating a home for himself and his family, and was able to succeed in moving out, and felt like that opportunity should be available to anyone, that someone who becomes homeless should be able to work their way out of homelessness. And with that simple idea, he began to mobilize the community, starting first with mobile homes. There were, at that time, an abundance of abandoned mobile homes just sitting out in fields in the outlying areas of the city. He solicited those and contributions to fix them up and moved them onto a mobile home park and began moving families into that. And from that small beginning, we've grown to owning an apartment complex and operating all the programs that we do.
Well, I think that this was, wasn't this program also co-founded by, wasn't there another individual you mentioned?
Alton Dyer was also involved in the early stages of HOBO.
Was he also a homeless person that had
Formerly, yes, sir.
He was, and the two of them began working together and reaching out to the community and asking for their help. And unfortunately, Marion is no longer in the city. He's now in Corpus Christi, Texas, but Alton is still here and still helps us out. Volunteers with us and helps to solicit community support.
Seems to me there was a religious connection. Was there a church that gave this particular emphasis and support?
Central Assembly of God provided the first office for HOBO, and they provided office space. Marion Morris was associated with that denomination, and so they were really gave it the initial support to allow it to exist and flourish. Quickly, the organization needed space that was accessible to the homeless and moved downtown in a building that Franklin Federal offered to us, and where we stayed for several years without rent and in a place where homeless people could come. We quickly outgrew that. It was a very inadequate facility for what we needed. The numbers were great. We had a tiny building, fairly decrepit. We were very grateful to have it. But the numbers that we were serving really required larger space.
Well, you know, one of the things, too, that I've heard about in recent days, and Rick, maybe you could give us some feedback on this, it's still a prickly issue, an unresolved issue, but one that I know, according to the papers, HOBO has had some attempt to help resolve, and that's having to do with day laborers.
Yes.
The folks that are on, like, First and I-35 each day out looking for work. And with the coming of the convention center in a few weeks, are actually having opened by this time. The question is there a better place for these people to find jobs, and what's the relation to HOBO in this regard?
Well, I think I could give you my personal opinion. After visiting with several of the city council members, HOBO, we would love to provide services, and we feel like we could probably do a good job of that. It wasn't originally in our plan to provide services for day laborers. However, through the evolution and the fact that we do provide shower facilities and storage for personal belongings, we have washers and dryers so that homeless people can wash and dry their own clothes free of charge. The restrooms, we take for granted using the restroom. Majority of homeless people, retail businesses downtown don't want to let a homeless person through their business to use their restroom. So we have restrooms and water fountain. We were hoping, or we offered, I guess, to provide the services that we currently have, or we could expand on that in order to maybe move those day laborers down closer to our corner. I think it would be a win-win situation for them and for HOBO, since a majority of the persons who stand on the work corner are probably homeless themselves. So it will be providing one more service that HOBO can provide.
Is that not going to happen?
Don't know. I think it's still a political football. Bob may have a little better insight into where we stand on that.
Where do we stand?
Well, I know it's been discussed by various subcommittees of the City Council, and I think there's a fear that, given that this is currently a completely unstructured, informal labor exchange function that's occurring, that those people are there voluntarily. Employers go there voluntarily to pick people up for day work. There is no sanctioned or otherwise organized effort behind that by investing in an improved facility, and by that the city is considering or has considered putting up canopies to provide shades, maybe some benches, outdoor bathrooms, that sort of thing, that maybe they'll build it and no one will come. That they'll still remain at the corner, and that it'll be the kind of political egg on your face, as it were. The city will have spent money, and it won't be used.
They're afraid to risk that.
So I think they're afraid to risk that. And I, as a citizen and taxpayer, I'm grateful that they're considering that aspect of it very carefully. Is it warranted? Is it justified? Is it an effective expense? As that issue first came up and continues to be discussed, and daily, it's been speaking every day with people who come to our facility, some of whom had no idea that this was being discussed in these various committee meetings and what have you, said, Bob, God, it'd be great if the day labor thing would move down here. Y'all now have the clinic, and y'all have all these things, and you have such great services for us, yet when we look for work, we still have to be down there on that corner. Isn't there some way that can move here? So I feel like there's a growing movement among those job seekers to actually relocate. They would prefer it to be closer to us.
Is there any way of identifying the employers that you could have a meeting with them to say, look, here are advantages to doing it this other way, and would expedite your job search for folks, and with the ones who are making the search?
I think we could, with just public awareness, that we could get the word out to the employers that we're providing a facility here and a little more control, perhaps. You know, if you have a problem with hiring, and obviously that should be a consideration whether you're hiring someone who is intoxicated. If there were some controls set up there, and not penalize the workers. That's the thing that I don't want to do. The people who are out there trying to do a day's worth of work.
I mean, if they're out there looking for jobs, you can assume that their intentions are good.
That's right.
Well, and I think for the most part that's true. And this is an interesting concept or comment that came to me yesterday from a homeless man. They're very frustrated by the fact that at First and I-35, there's a lot of people looking for work, or a lot of people out there that say they're looking for work, but by 10 o'clock they've had a quart of beer. And an employer drives by, and he may see one person with that quart and think, well, no good today, they're all drinking, I better move on and just delay my project or find someone somewhere else or call a temporary service. We feel like if it's moved to the lot behind us and that we're given some support to regulate it, not by having anyone sign in or ask for identifications or anything like that, but to simply encourage a safe and healthy environment free of alcohol, that everyone there is going to be truly interested in work, is going to be sober, and that more employers will probably use it, knowing that they're going to get people who are seriously interested in work and don't have to weave through those who are really just hanging out with other people that are there. And so for those true job seekers, I feel like more jobs will result for them because more people will use that function.
Well, I hope that something like that can be worked out. And I think that one of the things that I am encouraged about is how in a relatively short period of time, 5 years, all of this has happened. And it's in the midst of a lot of discouraging news, we can take hope from the fact that little can go a long way in a relatively short period of time.
We've been pretty successful in the last 2.5 years. We've helped over 300 people, 300 households, escape the condition of homelessness, who've been able to come to our program, go through our apartments, find a job, save up enough money, and move out on their own and pay their own rent.
You came to HOBO yourself as executive director how long ago?
2 years and 7 months.
Okay, 6 hours and 30 minutes sort of thing.
Right.
And where were you before that?
I worked for a year with the Private Industry Council. It's a job training program in Austin.
PIC.
The PIC, better known as the PIC. I was hired to help initiate and coordinate a job training program for homeless people. And it was in that work that I got to know HOBO and what it was trying to do, and felt like there were great needs there for perhaps for some of the things I could do, and was offered a job and took it.
And in the developmental side of things, Rick, in just a minute's time, tell us what you do and what you hope to accomplish.
I was originally hired by Bob and the board of directors to raise the money and supervise the construction of our resource center that I said was located there at 2nd in San Antonio. What I did basically was, with the help of Patrick Flynn of Flynn Construction and about 30 other contractors, local contractors, who donated just an enormous amount of their time and energies and materials to that facility. And then I had people out there helping me, like, for example, Brian Zakalik with a local attorney here, who helped me raise the money necessary.
Well, we would like to help you raise a little bit more money. As we can bring our program to an end, I'd like to share with folks the number that they can call to obtain more information, 476-4357. And if you can help, please give these folks a call. That's helping our brothers out. And I'd like to thank you, Bob and Rick, for being with us today.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
And for you folks looking in, peace be with you. I'm Richard Thompson. Good day.
For more information, call Austin Metropolitan Ministries at 472-7627.